what's up, guys? So I wanted to give y'all a tour of my little office space, because I know y'all see this in the background every time I make a video, but thought I'd give y'all a little tour. Right off the bat, you'll notice back here, I'm currently writing a novel that I'm hoping to be my first published novel. And these are character posters. As you can see, let's take Aaron here, for example. It says age, occupation, family, and then if you go a little further, biggest fear, biggest motivator, traumatic event, most prized possession. So it's basically I have to go through each of those characters and figure out the answer to each of those, little prompts for each character. So that's what's going on back there. Working on it. As you can see, there's a lot of blank space, but it's getting there. But first, someone who's one of the more recognizable people in all of Western civilization. I have Jesus here. Jesus. Just a little sculpture called the Peace of Christ. But yeah, I grew up as a Christian. I left the faith a few years back, but I always retained a fascination with Jesus and the historical Jesus in particular, and so a bit of a souvenir from my early life. Also very much into meditation and mindfulness, so kind of a perfect marriage between my old life and my new life. So I imagine that moment there is from the story called The Garden of Gethsemane. This is the first Bible I bought for literary purposes. Gethsemane. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping. Man, those apostles, a bunch of failures, man, just a bunch of slobs. Because their eyes were heavy, they did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough! The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." So I imagine that's him during the time where he may have, gone off on his own and prayed. And moving on, the goddess Diana. She is the Roman goddess of the hunt. She soon began to kind of take on traits of other gods. I know she absorbed the moon goddess, Luna, so she is also considered the goddess of the moon. She is considered the goddess of the wild animals and just the wild in general, which I would say is the point of her being in the nude. It's supposed to represent that wild nature of humanity, our natural wild state. She's always with a bow. This is actually based on a fountain in Mexico City, Mexico. But yeah, I always was fascinated by female deities, female gods. So I actually got this while I was traveling to Mexico. So I actually got this from Mexico. I've always been fascinated with human nature and, the fact that beneath the civilized veneer we put up, there is a sort of wild, natural state that in some of our literature and film and stuff, that spirit is kind of set free. That's kind of the goal of the human experience, right? To reconcile our wild side with our civilized side. Reconcile our, instincts with our intelligence. Now, the nude is also a bit of a reference to a story. So she was apparently bathing in the wild in an area that was sacred to her. A hunter, a hero of Thebes named Actaeon, I think that's how you say his name. He happened to spot her as he was out there hunting, and he had his hounds with him. So he was out there hunting, doing his thing. And he happened to come across Diana bathing. She was glimpsed naked by a man, so that kind of hurt her modesty, hurt her purity, obviously, because someone had glimpsed her naked form. And she turned him into a fawn, which his own hounds turned on him and tore him to pieces. Yeah. And then moving on is Lady Godiva. I have a more personal attachment to this figure. She was a historical figure, but we usually just remember her from the legends that sprang up in her wake, and we don't know if the legends have any truth to them. Historically, she was married to a guy named Leofric, who was an earl. She was an Anglo-Saxon, so this was back in the 11th century. He decided he wanted to place these really high, burdensome taxes on the peasantry, the people, and she was not having any of it. She was not happy about that. So what Leofric said was, you would have to ride naked through the city before I lower these taxes. And she ended up jumping on a horse and riding through the city naked. And the legend goes that after she rode through the city naked, he, ditched the taxes. So she saved the peasantry from these really, crushing taxes. Before she rode, it was said that she asked everybody to close their windows, so to save her own modesty. One guy, even in some stories his name is actually Thomas, but one guy actually peeked and got a glimpse of her naked going through the city, and in some versions he was struck blind, in some versions he was struck dead. But that's actually where we get the term peeping Tom. According to my father, we are actually distantly related to the historical Lady Godiva. I have an Ancestry.com account, so I'm still researching that. But that'd be cool. I guess it's also kind of odd that I have a distant relative nude in my room.
And no.
This is Edgar Allan Poe, the writer. Edgar Allan Poe, yes. So Edgar Allan Poe, Complete Tales and Poems. When I was in college, I studied Poe. When I was teaching, I taught Poe, so I love Edgar Allan Poe. I will share a pleasant little poem that he wrote. It's called Annabel Lee. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. So I won't read the whole rest of the poem. You'll have to read it yourself to figure out, or to see what happens to Miss Annabel Lee. This is how thick this book is, and this is his complete tales and poems. So he's written a lot. He's written some great short stories. We have my Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll. I want to see it. Let's see if I can't bring it out here. Yeah, and it's a white vinyl. You see that? Isn't that dope? But yeah, I've always been a fan of Joan Jett. I went and saw her in Louisiana, I think it was, and bought some stuff from her merch store. I got this close to the stage. She was right there, man. So yeah, you'll occasionally see me playing music. I'll probably even start like a stories in music type of thing. I'll probably start talking about music on this channel. Weirdly enough, I have these vinyls. I don't have a vinyl player. Haven't gotten the money to get one yet. Yeah. So these are kind of just collecting dust at the moment. And then just to kind of hope y'all don't get motion sick. Just to show y'all around my room. I got a green screen here. Whoop. I got a green screen. So if I ever decide to do special effects, I don't know. And then this is where it all gets done, guys, right here. Here I am. See, here's my mic. Here's my computer recording my mic. And this is the monitor recording the camera. Camera goes right there. That's where I shoot stuff. And then I got my TV here when I'm doing gaming vids. That's where I'm looking, so yeah. And then, of course, my Xbox over there, and then a trash can. Everybody needs a trash can. That's the office space I'm working with, guys. So Welcome to my abode. We'll go on this journey together. But yeah, so just a couple more announcements. Remember, on the June 26th episode of the Dryftwood Podcast, I will be appearing. We're going to be talking about stories, which is going to be really exciting. Remember, on Sunday, Storytime Sunday for Modern Warfare 1 concludes. We are done with our first game in Storytime Sunday. So if you have any suggestions about what games you want me to tackle in Storytime Sunday, just put them down in the comments below. If I don't hear anything, I'll probably just move on to Modern Warfare 2. We'll see what happens. But if you got a game you want me to look at, put it down there and I'll definitely check it out. Alright guys, this is your story guy Ben, signing out.